All righty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Sunday, November 6th. OU unfortunately lost yesterday against Baylor, so we're going to recap that game, talk about what went wrong, what we're going to see need improvement on to finish the year. Hopefully, OU can win a few more games before the year's over, so we're going to be talking about that, and then we're going to recap our bets. I was not that great this weekend. Jose had a bounce back weekend after a rough one last week. So we're going to go in depth and probably just do some general college football talk. Obviously, there were some updates and upsets and some great games yesterday. A lot of good football, even though that OU lost. There was a lot of entertaining football to watch yesterday. So before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're knocking on the door of 5,200. We're only like 30 something subscribers away. So if you're new here or if you've been here quite often, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot and it's free. Subscribe to the channel. Turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Apple and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. I know like 55-60% of you do not subscribe. So majority of our audience does not subscribe to us. So help us out. It's free and easy. All right. So unfortunately, OU had a 2-game winning streak coming in. So did Baylor. OU ultimately ended up losing 38-35 to the Baylor Bears at home. There's a lot of different aspects to what went wrong and what could have went right for Oklahoma to win the game, but ultimately it didn't. It's a tough loss. Jose, what are some of your initial thoughts and takeaways on this game, and where do you see what went wrong?
The first half was really the thing that shot the team. You can't turn the ball over 3 times and expect to win the game. I think that if there's any bright spot to take away, especially from the last 2 games, is passing defense has gotten better as the years gone on. We're not making every single quarterback we play look like the best quarterback out there. I mean, if you guys can, I'm sure we're all going to think back to like the 3-game losing streak, right? Adrian Martinez had a day against us. Quinn Ewers probably had his best game of the season against us. And then Duggan, and he's been really good all year, but I think that probably probably one of the best games he's had this year was against us. And I mean, some could argue that probably got him to start raising into that Heisman conversation. Who knows if that's where he'll be at the end of the day? But he's definitely doing well this year. Oklahoma just, I think, and no discredit to Baylor because they did really well in playing against Oklahoma's weakness, which was the defensive line. Those guys got bullied, and the couple times they did get pressure is when something good happened, but they didn't get pressure nearly as many times as they should have. And what I noticed, because Baylor also runs a 3-man front occasionally, it's their linebackers that are able to make up for any deficiency that, and when it comes to rushing or clogging up holes with a 3-man front. That to me, that seems like the biggest weakness right now, the linebacker position. Stutzman occasionally just over pursues. There's a little too aggressive. Can be good sometimes. Can clearly bite us in the ass just as many times as it can be good. It was good to see Jaron Kanik out there, but we also saw why Brent Venables didn't want to put him out there as early as he did, because he did have some bad attack angles on trying to get tackles. Wasn't amazing at playing against the run. Clearly, the one of the Squirrel Williams, and that's not his real name for those people that are talking shit on the kid on Twitter. That's just his nickname. He had a day, almost 200 yards by himself on the ground. That's really inexcusable. Again, the defensive line just can't do anything to stop anyone, it feels like. And again, that's where the linebacker should come in and help. I think Deshaun White did pretty good. It seems like he takes a brunt of the criticism from fans. Again, I just don't expect people to, or this team to be like top notch. I don't expect them all to be in a conversation for awards at the end of the year. Dylan Gabriel was decent. Two, 3 picks, can't have them. 2 of them were on tip balls, so those are tough. They're clearly going to go on his record, but tough to put it all on him. Could the passes have were they the best passes to make? Probably not. But again, if you're the receiver, if you know you can't make the catch, especially if you're just trying to go for a one-handed contested catch, more often than not, you're not going to make it. So just bat it down. I know they're trying to make the big play, but it just doesn't make sense, especially when you know their defense is going to be in the right position at the right time. Just get it down on the ground, make it hard for them to get their hands on the ball. And then our offensive line, I think, has gotten better every single week. The run game is still there. And I think that Baylor's probably one of the better teams against the run. It's not like they're terrible, exactly like Iowa State. They can stop the run, and Oklahoma was still able to do that to get what they needed on the ground. The one thing I didn't understand was the when we did see young players, especially on the offensive side of the ball, it was way too early in the game. I remember in the first quarter, I believe it was a whole set of young wide receivers, and then it was Tawi Walker was back there. Not saying that they shouldn't get playing time, but in the first quarter of a pivotal game that could maybe not determine your season, but definitely give an idea of where your team is going to be at the end of the year. Not a great time. Probably do that in the third or fourth quarter when you either know you have secured or gotten closer to securing the dub, or maybe their abilities are going to be an additional skill set that the starter can't give you. Right. I just I don't think there's one specific thing outside of the running defense that is a clear deficiency in this defense. There's not one player that you can say, well, he really sucks, he shouldn't have been there. I think as a whole, the team didn't do amazing, and it's all about execution. I really don't think this is too much on the coaching. Like you can see that there is developments, and if you can't, then go rewatch the first few games against the Big 12 in conference play, and you can tell that this team is getting better. They're just fighting themselves, shooting themselves in the foot, and you can't do that when you play a good teammate like Baylor.
No, and Dave Aranda is, like you said, is one of the guys that you can't shoot yourself in the foot and expect to be. While the defense wasn't great, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and act like it was awesome. They did give up 38 points, but on the other side, on the other hand, they did have two short fields that they were given because of those tipped interceptions. So hypothetically, if they wouldn't have given up touchdowns there or been put in those positions, the feeling in this game might be totally different. They gave up 24 points elsewhere, down the line, and it's just, I don't know. There's so many different things. So we went into this game and we were thinking the running back to worry about is Reese, and Craig Williams just explodes and has the best game of his year. Literally had 200 yards rushing coming into this game and basically had 200 against Oklahoma. I don't quite understand why this defensive line can't really, play against the run and can't really plug up the holes and just defend the run. But it's probably because the lack of depth. It's just, and the linebacker core, like you talked about, the depth there is really thin. Obviously, they lost a few people. Wete to the portal. I guess he was more of an edge, but then you lost You lost Roof, and then you lost someone else to a medical retirement. I forget who else lost or who we lost, but there's been two guys that have left the linebacker room. So that doesn't help at all. I think what is most important and what we're seeing as the season's ending is Oklahoma's looking to see what they've got. They're rotating in the younger guys. They're getting them some playing time. They're evaluating everyone to see what do we have and what do we need. And it's very obvious the defensive line and linebacking core is extremely thin and weak. I mean, you think about Deshaun White and David Owegbu, they're not going to be here next year. most likely. I don't think either one of them have any eligibility left, right? And they're going to both be gone, so they're contributors. You've got Stutzman. I mean, there's not much else really when you think about it. And they're going to bring in 3 or 4 different linebackers, I bet, in the transfer portal. I mean, there's going to be a lot of transfer portal additions along this front seven, and it's necessary. We'll look at the offense. I mean, the offensive line, yes, I think it's looking better. It's typically Coach B normally has these guys improving throughout the year. I mean, it would be more concerning if they started off hot and they started falling apart towards the end. Eric Gray, he's playing himself into being a solid NFL draft pick. I mean, he's put 106 yards rushing yesterday, plus another 58 through the air. So he had, what was it, 160 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not bad. He's clearly running back number 1. Dylan Gabriel even ran quite a bit as well. He was mobile. So you look at next year there, Eric Gray's going to be gone because he's going to go to the NFL. Marcus Major really hasn't emerged at all. And obviously Javante Barnes isn't playing right now, but they've got to see what they've got there. And I would kind of like to see Gavin Sawchuk. Could Sawchuk get a few games? Don't blow his red shirt, but we're at the end of the season where now OU's only got 3 games left regular season wise, and hopefully they win one so they get a bowl game. Why not give Sawchuk a game or 2, depending on how many games he's got left, see what you've got there. Marvin Mims bounced back, obviously, 4 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Everyone's, he's having a terrible year, whatever. I mean, he's put together a year of 38 catches, 678 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And in this guy's defense, remember, he's been playing with quarterback outside of Dylan Gabriel. I mean, Davis Bevel could not get the ball to anyone, and he played against them against Texas. Obviously, TCU was it was just bad all around. I don't think Marvin Mims is having that bad of a year. I mean, he's going to be able to put together, probably counting a bowl game, he'll probably put up 1,000 yards, or close to it, 900 to 1,000 yards, and that's not bad for a brand new offense and a brand new system. Now the question becomes, does he stay into next year? Does he transfer? Does he try to go to the NFL? I don't know. And I like what we see with Farouk. Theo Weiss just hasn't been able to really emerge like I was hoping for this year. So I'd like to see Jalil Farouk get more. Drake Stoops obviously caught a touchdown, so it wasn't horrible. The wide receiver depth isn't bad. There are some times where I felt like they were open. They just weren't getting the ball. Gabriel wasn't seeing them, or it was just that he was under pressure. But obviously, it was a very balanced attack, and this is kind of what we were wanting from Lebby as a whole. They ran for almost 240 yards and they threw for about 260. That's pretty even. They dominated on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they put together 500 yards of offense. And typically, when you put together 500 yards of offense, 35 points, a lot of times that's going to win you a lot of football games. And even with 4 turnovers, I mean, they just beat themselves. I mean, literally, that's what it comes down to. Is OU literally beat themselves.
I'm kind of putting the loss, and I know we're saying like right now, the team themselves, they lost the game. Baylor did a great job, but Oklahoma beat themselves. The offense did not capitalize on the few opportunities the defense was able to give them. The interception, Oklahoma's answer to that, if I remember correctly, was to punt it away on that extra possession they got. There was only one time that they took advantage of it, and it was in the second half. Oklahoma forced a 3-and-out. Oklahoma's defense forced 3-and-out in the second half. The offense came out, got a touchdown. On the next drive, the defense got another stop. And then what does the offense do to answer to help them out and play good complementary football? They end up punting the ball away. Like, you can't do that. And that was whenever they punted it away to start the fourth quarter. If you're like you're already down, you can't get momentum clearly, and there was definitely some discipline things that Venables addressed in his press conference. Like, it's not at some point you can't blame the coaching. It's on execution and discipline on the field. They can't go out there and do it themselves. They just tell the players, and the players need to execute what has been coached, and they didn't yesterday. And that again, what happened. If outside of the turnovers, if the defense is doing something to help you start gaining momentum on the offense, you can't just go out there and not execute. At least get a field goal. Clearly, that field goal at the end of the half was a real kick in the ass, because it would have probably sent this game to overtime, assuming it would have even gotten there, right? Hopefully, that would have gained Oklahoma enough momentum to start getting something more on the offense, because just they did get a lot of yards, but they did not. Those yards came out to 35 points, and it ended up not being enough. Like, we're still in the time of Oklahoma football where we're going to need to win some shootouts. And I know that's not what people really want, but if you look at the world of football, and not just college football, it's a lot harder for defenses to establish themselves, especially in college, because there is the rotation of the constant rotation of a roster, and even more so now because of the transfer portal. You got to teach players every single year. You got and it's just constant teaching in and out. You're not going to have consistency for the most part at a program like Oklahoma. I mean, we're seeing Alabama struggle this year, and I mean, for the last 15 years, it's not very common for them to struggle as much as they have this year. I I still think this is a lot of year one stuff where you're seeing players, either it's not the right players for what the scheme is designed to do, or the players aren't executing. And it really depends on position there. Again, I think like a Wigbu is just too slow. And I think we can all see that. Not that he's a bad player, but he's not really the linebacker that you need for this scheme. You need a little bit more speed. Deshaun White has improved throughout the year. I was probably one of his bigger critics coming into the year. If you guys watched some of our stuff in the offseason, someone asked us in one of our lives who we thought was going to not be a starter or not going to be playing much that was a starter last year. I said Deshaun White because he really wasn't amazing last year, but he's gotten better. Is he going to be an NFL talent? Probably not. I mean, unless he can be one of those guys that just puts in hella work, and once he gets to the NFL, maybe he can do that. But just from what he's done in college, it doesn't look like an amazing NFL prospect. Like, and then defensive line, that as a whole, just not great. I don't know if Ethan Downs needs to be moved to the inside, maybe put a little bit more bulk on him, and can kind of give him a Jalen Redmond role where he can be a pass rusher through the interior of the line. Because to me, right now, Jalen Redmond might be our best defensive lineman, and he is just a rotational player at the moment. Which I'm not sure if that's the right call, but that is just what my eyes are telling me. The offense, yeah, Theo Weiss, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to put things together this year. I don't know if it's because the few targets he is getting is a lot of short down, on short situations where just to get the first down, and he doesn't create enough separation on big plays, or the offense is just trying to get the ball to Jalil Farouk and Marvin Mims because they're all a little more explosive when they do have the ball in their hands. I mean, again, I think the offense did good, but not enough to win the ball game. I think that's pretty much all there is to point at. I saw some people on Twitter saying that the Venable isn't the right guy. I saw again others saying that Levy needs to get fired. And while I was on that train after the Texas game, you really can't put this one on Levy because the play calls showed that they can get yards, but the players did not get the points. What do you expect Lubby to do in that situation when you see situations where the team can execute and either there was a flag on the play to stop momentum or um, again just bad discipline or they just straight up weren't aggressive enough. They're on the Wildcat play. That's the one play call that I have looked back on since the end of the day, since the end of the game yesterday and this morning. Why call that Wildcat play in that situation? Like, give it to Brayton Willis. He's the one that showed that he can run the Wildcat the best, not Marcus Major. Marcus Major hasn't been the bulldozer that people have said that he is, and he'd made a couple good plays, but he wasn't amazing overall yesterday. Not that he can't be, but yesterday it just wasn't his day. Let Braden Willis do something with the ball. He's been the answer to a lot of the offensive woes throughout the year. So let him, give him the ball. Defense, going back to them, run defense terrible. I saw someone or a few people say like if you take some plays out, this defense really didn't play that bad. I don't think the defense played that bad, but the running defense, you can't take that many plays out. Like, not to say that he was wrong in what he was trying to say, but Brandon Drum mentioned like if you take these 9 big plays out that they had on the ground, the defense really only let like 90 yards happen. Well, I would, in some cases, you can make that argument. You can say, well, they let 2 big plays on the ground, but for the rest of the game, they shut them down to like 100 yards. When it's 9 big plays, it's an issue. It's not something that happened by accident. They kept finding the players and attacking the wrong holes. On the 4th down play, 10, they essentially ice the game for Baylor. You had players in that gap that just got pushed off. And it wasn't just one guy that got pushed off. It was like 2 or 3 guys that got pushed off in just a wide open hole for Squirrel to attack and get to ice the game. You can't have that happen. And I love what Brent Venables did during the press conference. Like, you can tell he's pretty much just done with the dumbass questions that the reporters gave him, because sometimes it really seems like the reporters aren't even watching the football game and they saw 1 or 2 bad things and said, all right, that's what I'm asking. I'm just going to go hang out in the press box and have some free food, and then I'll be down at the press conference whenever we're done. I still think this team's going to be bowl eligible. This is definitely probably the hardest game left on the schedule in regards to just talent to talent matchup. The 2 road games left are going to be tough for sure. Bedlam, the more we get into football season, the more it looks like these teams are evenly matched. So 3 winnable games are left on the schedule. Hopefully we are 8-4 when it comes to when it's all said and done. 7-5 will not surprise me, but 8-4, I'm hopeful for it. So
8-4 wouldn't be bad. I mean, remember at one point people were saying OU was going to be 3-9. 4-8, 3-9, 4-8 best case scenario. Well, they've got 5 wins right now. Looking at a positive on what Oklahoma did, they were very efficient on 3rd down on offense. They went 10 for 15. Typically, when you go 10 for 15 on 3rd downs, that's winning football. They were able to move the ball. They didn't dominate the time of possession, which I feel like for this team, you need to dominate the time of possession to keep your defense, your weak part of the team, off the field and give them some more time to rest because the depth is thin. I think that's part of the problem with this, because Levy runs a very fast up tempo offense and wants to run up and down the field, which normally is not a big deal if you've got a solid defense that has a lot of depth. This team unfortunately doesn't have a lot of depth, so the guys that are playing all the time and they're exhausted. And if you can get the possession to be where the defense is only on the field for about 25 minutes rather than 33 to 35 minutes, that makes a big difference when they're off the field for an extra 8 or 10 minutes a game, and your offense is able to just run the ball and not be, I guess, quite as flashy. And everyone wants OU to run up and down the field and score a lot of points, and I get that. But if the winning formula for this is running the ball, which they ran the ball a lot, but is to hold on to the ball. and take a possession or two away from the offense of the other team. If they could have just flipped the time of possession, because the time of possession here is almost 34 minutes to Baylor and 26 minutes to Oklahoma. If that would have been flipped, this game would have been totally different. And it really, because most teams, even in college or NFL, identify what their weak parts of this team. And generally, I wouldn't say it's a great, offense isn't great, but it's better than, it's their strong point of this team. If they would have spent more time on the field, you would win more games. And I think that's something that they need to do at West Virginia. And I know people are going to be, as soon as Levy slows it down and runs the ball and tries to play the not so flashy offense, people are going to be calling out Levy like, "What's your problem? What is he doing? He doesn't know what he's doing. We're not scoring 40 points a game. I mean, not that we scored 40 here, but ball control, slower pace, it would do a lot of good for Oklahoma. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. And I will want to correct myself. I said 4 turnovers. It's only 3. OU only had 3 turnovers. I just realized that earlier in the video. But the part that OU struggled in also is fourth down efficiency against Baylor. Baylor went 3 for 3. And they gotta have it moments, especially the one to ice the game. OU was unable to answer the call. And we've seen that earlier in the year too, on fourth downs, on, gotta have it moments and gotta have it plays. And OU's failed to do that. I think it's growing pains. I really think that this whole OU needs to graduate and let a lot of kids transfer. That's what it needs to come down to, because like you said earlier, at some point it's not on the coaches. If the coaches are putting you in the right spot and you're just not making the play, I mean, the coaches can't be out there doing it. And if they put you in the right spot, they're calling the right plays, and you're not making the plays, maybe you're not the right guy. Um, they've had a whole year to evaluate this entire roster now. They're going to know who's going to be graduating, who's going to be going to the NFL, and maybe who's going to be nudged or encouraged to go explore other options for themselves. They're going to be able to try to get, people are going to be leaving. They're going to identify their weak parts, weak part of the team, and they're going to be able to bring in a lot of different players this offseason. And I think you're going to see a different team as this team goes into next year. And people calling for Brent Venables and Jeff Levy's job. Let me ask you, who do you want? Who would come in and replace them and be better? I mean, really think about it. You want to fire someone, okay, great. Well, you're going to be competing against Auburn, that's for sure. For, I don't know, maybe Hugh Freeze if you want Hugh Freeze, but Hugh Freeze doesn't have a great track record. You want Urban Meyer? I mean, he doesn't have a great track record, and we're trying to build a good culture. And I don't know, like, who would you really go out and who would win day one for you? I don't think really there's a guy out there that would be better than Brent Venables and Jeff Levy. I mean, you want to call for their job, but there's no answer. So we're in for the long haul, and everything's going to be good. I think this team's going to go 8-4, 7-5. Oklahoma State's not playing well. West Virginia's not playing well. Texas Tech isn't horrible, but there are 3 winnable games. OU ends up 7-5, 8-4, playing a bowl game, 9-4, 8-5, somewhere in there. It'll be all right. I mean, I think you're going to sign a top 10 class. You're going to get a handful of transfers, 5, 6, 7 transfers, probably mainly on the defensive side of the ball. And I think this team will be primed to win the Big 12 next year. I just really do.
It's also not just like who's going to replace these guys. It's just year one. Like and I'm sure that some of the frustration from fans is because you're seeing all these first year head coaches like Marcus Freeman. Notre Dame's doing well, but look at Notre Dame's schedule. The losses they have, or losses that are like downright inexcusable. At least the losses Oklahoma has are like, all right, those teams are pretty good. Like, we didn't lose to our non-conference schedule. We lost to teams that have looked like, as the season has gone on. Not, I mean, even and you can include Texas. Texas hasn't looked amazing, but they've looked good. The teams that Oklahoma's lost to have been good teams. Dan Lanning, their team is just that's one where I'll be like, all right, yeah, Dan Lanning is doing really good up in Oregon. but they didn't have as much turnover as Oklahoma did. Like you can point to different issues where this is the year one thing right now. Now, if this continues to happen through year 2 and 3, where the same stuff, same mistakes, same issues are coming up, then yeah, then it is the coaching, and maybe it is time to evaluate if he was the right player or if he was the right coach. But right now, I mean, Bob Stoops didn't start off amazing. Nick Saban didn't start off amazing. And I know people are going to say, well, that's just a cop out, but that's just reality of sports. You don't get your way every time you step out on the field. Sometimes you get beat, and sometimes you can't say that it was Oklahoma's fault. This time it was, but sometimes the other team just better. And that's the matter of fact. Things will improve. Like it's Oklahoma. You don't, for the most part, you don't see stretches of a long period of time where this team is bad. You, for the most part, the team is historically really, really good. And because of the brand itself, it's going to help Brent Venables make sure that happens. And again, with recruiting, and we'll talk about it in a video soon later this week, the brand itself helps this team recruit at a very high level. But you like Baylor doesn't historically have amazing recruiting classes, and people are complaining about why isn't Oklahoma pulling every single 5-star and high 4-star, and are complaining about getting 3-star players or walk-ons. Like, yeah, it would be nice to get all these 4 and 5-star recruits, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna pan out, and vice versa. Clearly, the 3-stars have a less likely chance of pan out, but it's all on the buy-in. Will they buy into the situation that they're put in? Will they execute when they're asked to make a big play on those must-have situations? We'll see, right? If next year these same issues are happening, then I will jump on your bandwagon and start questioning the hire. But right now, it's just tough to put it all on Brent Venables and Levy, because you're seeing, if you're watching the team, yeah, they're improving, but they're still making mistakes that they shouldn't make. And Venable said in his press conference, like, what more can they do from the sideline? You just got to hope that the player makes the play when they're on the field. And I think they will next year. This year, we'll see flashes of it. And we have seen flashes of it.
We have seen flashes of it, and I do agree. I think next year is going to be totally different. If are they going to win a national championship next year? I'm not going to come out and say that they would, but I do think that there is a path to Oklahoma winning a national championship in the next 5 years, and I don't think that's ridiculous. And probably some of the frustration about questioning the Brent Venables hire also is like you're talking about other first year coaches in new places. Like, yeah, Lincoln Riley, they're winning. They're 8-1 now, but I will say that the greatness of Caleb Williams, and I don't care. I mean, I'm not. A lot of people don't like Caleb Williams. At the end of the day, he's a fantastic football player, and he's playing at an extremely high level. And when you have a player like him that is that great, he can hide a lot of deficiencies in the team around him. They gave up, what was it, like 34, 35 points to Cal last night. If OU had Caleb Williams still, the greatness of Caleb Williams, OU would probably be like, I don't know, 8-1, 7-2 right now. I really think that Caleb Williams can move the needle that much and win you a game like that, like the OU Baylor game. When you have players that are that great, whether they're on the offense or defensive side of the ball, they can hide a lot of issues. So OU just doesn't have that dominant player on either side of the ball. They have good players. They just don't have the player that is the it factor, maybe like a Jackson Arnold that he brings. And because, he's coming in as a 5-star, and Denton Geyer is a machine, and he has that it factor to him. Not that Dylan Gabriel isn't good, but he has his limitations, and people have seen it. But you can win with Dylan Gabriel as long as you've got a solid group of players around him, and there's deficiencies throughout this team that will be corrected. So I don't know. I'm ready for next week's game. I'm still here. I watch every game. It doesn't matter. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to any betting, or are you good to go?
I agree with the quarterback thing. Even if you swapped the quarterbacks, you needed to, like games like yesterday's, you need a quarterback that will be the game changer and not the game manager. So
Yeah. I mean, like Kyler Murray, the team that Kyler Murray had, he hit a lot of issues there. And
oh
he
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, he was that good and that carried this team or carried that team to a playoff berth. I mean, Kyler is that good. You got to have that kind of player, and that's what Jackson Arnold has and will bring. And then hypothetically, if OU's defense is really good and you've got an it player like that, that's how you win national titles. So um, anyway, all right. So betting, Jose, you had like 10 bets. I had 5 going into the week. I was 30, 21, and 1. And you were going into this week. What were you?
I was 25, 27, and 1.
Okay. And I ended up going 1 and 4. I think you told me you went 6 and 4
Yep.
this weekend. So I'll just start off my one and only win, Missouri and Kentucky. Kentucky -1. They decided that they were the better team, and I thought they were. And Kentucky ended up winning. I mean, it was a close game. I thought Missouri was going to pull one out, but they didn't.
So my win that I will gladly say I probably shouldn't have picked, or my loss that I'll say I shouldn't have picked, was the Clemson one, and I said it in our video on Friday. I picked that one with my heart just because Peyton Bowen was visiting and I needed Notre Dame to look bad, but they looked decent. I wouldn't say they looked amazing either. Clemson is just not a great offensive team. Um, They'll probably be better once DJ Uiagalelei transfers. I can't imagine that Dabo and the offensive coordinator are going to want him to be their signal caller next season.
And imagine not. So moving on, the next one was the OU Baylor game. I took OU -3.5. Probably picked that with my heart. But OU, at the end of the day, like we talked about in this whole video, they had their chances and they probably should have won the game if they wouldn't have turned it over 3 different times. So
I was scared that Oklahoma was going to cover that at the last second, not going to lie, because I was in a conundrum. I both wanted to win this bet, but wanted Oklahoma to win. And with the situation we were in, that was impossible. So yeah, I mean, I'm not happy that I was right, but I was right. Baylor +3. But I did say, like, I think Oklahoma just wins by a field goal if a win was to come out of yesterday's game, and it was just a field goal win, but for the other team.
yeah, that's fair. Georgia, Tennessee. I took Tennessee +8. They went up to like 9.5 the morning of the game. Um, I didn't think Tennessee was that far off. I knew their defense wasn't great, but I figured their offense was going to be able to put up some points on Georgia. Obviously, I was wrong there. Georgia is far and away the best team in college football, and they look dominant.
Yeah, same game, but I was on the other side of that. The line just didn't look right. How do you put the number one team to be 8-point underdogs? If it was like 3 or 4, I'd get it just because of the home field advantage for Georgia, but 8 seemed like way too many. And because the line did make sense, it made sense.
Yeah. Oklahoma State, Kansas. I took OSU +1. After we did the video, I started thinking to myself, why is that line the way it was? And obviously Vegas, I think earlier in the week, Vegas had it like, I started doing more research. Vegas had OSU like as a 5 or 6 point favorite earlier in the week, I believe. And then it shifted because Spencer Sanders, the reports started coming out that Sanders might not have played. I should have done a little more research, but I still didn't think that Oklahoma State would have been that far off from Kansas. But obviously, Oklahoma State looked horrible. And that's back-to-back weeks of Oklahoma State making me lose. So that's what I get for picking them.
Yeah, the Jim Knowles departure is clearly starting to affect them more as we get deeper into the season. But yeah, that's also a loss for me. I took the money line. I really thought that they should have been able to win that game. Clearly,
Yeah.
they weren't, but
Yeah. And then my final game was Texas, Kansas State. I took Kansas State +2.5. Kansas State had their opportunities. They got down big early and they battled back and had a chance at the end to drive down the field, but they couldn't. So I went 1 and 4. Jose, you want to wrap and just go through your last handful?
Yeah. So I had West Virginia, Iowa State under. Offenses stink. Defense, Iowa State's defense was good enough to hold West Virginia down. Texas and Kansas State over. Defenses stink, and both offenses were able to score. Wake Forest lost that one. I guess the backup quarterback for NC State was good enough to pick on the West Virginia, or not West Virginia, sorry, Wake Forest defense. Unfortunate for them because it seemed like they could have made some problems for the committee if they were to look at the record after Clemson's loss yesterday. Iowa, Purdue under. Classic Iowa. Can't score the ball. I'm pretty sure those are defensive points. Ohio State minus 38. Probably should have seen that as way too many points, but it's also Ohio State, and clearly the weather was an issue because it was hella windy and they couldn't pass the ball very much. And their run game just isn't amazing. So they only won by 14. And Liberty, I'm not going to lie, I really, like I said on Friday, I think that's more of a backdoor cover situation because 14 against Arkansas. Arkansas is good, but they're not great. I really thought maybe an Arkansas 10-point win, 13-point win was going to be where I was going to take this one as a dub. Liberty outright winning the game never crossed my mind. I did not think that was a possibility. Like I said, I knew they were a good team, but I didn't think Hugh Freeze was going to come up and just shock the world, I guess, and beat Arkansas.
No, I didn't either, but that game was entertaining. Overall, there's a lot of good football games. So on the season, you are now 31 and 31 and 1.
Yep.
And I am 31 and 25 and 1. So back at 50%. I'm a hair over 50%. Still not too bad. There's a lot worse gamblers out there than what we're doing right now. So just general college football talk. A lot of upsets. I'm curious to see what the college football rankings are. I want chaos. Do you have any final thoughts, or you want to do the individual challenge?
Give us your top four and tell us what you think about the Oklahoma game. I'm sure a lot of you have already done that as we've gone through this video, but tell us what you think should be the top four on Tuesday.
Top four. Georgia. I don't think anyone's going to argue that Georgia's not supposed to be number one. Georgia 1. Ohio State, I think, stays at 2. Probably Michigan 3. And then I think you put TCU at 4. I think you put TCU in there. I mean, I know some people might disagree, but what about you?
So I have to remind myself here, but I think what we'll see on Tuesday will be Georgia at number 1. Ohio State will be at 2. They shouldn't be, but they will be. Michigan at 3 and Oregon at 4. I think TCU won't get the benefit of being undefeated. I don't think it's completely without merit because they keep getting so lucky with the starting quarterback getting hurt. I don't know what is happening. Maybe it's just their year and they're gonna make it in at the end of the year undefeated. But if they lose a game, they're not getting it. So they better keep hoping that luck continues for the rest of the year because they were on the ropes there for a second with Texas Tech, and then
Yeah.
they were able to pull away at the end.
I mean, same could be said about Michigan. Michigan was losing at half. Ohio State was tied up with Northwestern, who was horrendous.
Yeah, but they weren't lucky where the other starting quarterback got hurt. Now their defense and now their offense can't move the ball. TCU, on the other hand,
I don't
and it's
know.
not just one game, right? It's every single Big 12 game. All of them. The starting quarterback they play against somehow gets hurt. And Kansas State, they knocked out the starter and the backup and played against third string.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get it. Part of me has a hard time believing that Oregon should be number 4 after losing 49-3. It's one thing to be, I understand you can get better throughout the year, but when you lose by 46 points, I don't know. I think you put Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4. I'd probably put LSU at 5 and Oregon at 6, but that's just me. So it's going to work itself out. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to lose. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are on a collision path. TCU, I do kind of think will lose over the next 4 games. I think they're going to lose, in the Big 12 title game. I think LSU could beat Georgia. They might not. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting SEC championship game. There's going to be a lot of chaos. I really believe that there will be.
If Tennessee runs the table, they have a very clear path of getting into the playoffs. So they could be number 5.
They do. Yeah, they definitely could be number 5. I don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But made it this far, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Apple and Spotify. And be sure to come back for tomorrow's video, Monday. We're going to be talking recruiting. Thanks.